Hello everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to the History of Video Games. My name is Wes, and I am here with my wonderful compatriot, Ben. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you, Wes?
I am doing pretty good, but I want to get straight into what games you've been playing. I'm excited to hear. I know it's Final Fantasy 14, but I still want to hear what you want to talk about.
Yep. Well, you know. So I'm playing Final Fantasy 14 quite a lot still. I was really trying to grind out. I really wanted a mount, right? Like, I was just tired of walking around everywhere. You can teleport. There's like a Hearthstone kind of feature. And Actually, I think you can teleport just about anywhere, anytime you want, but it costs gold. But I'm a cheap guy, so I just walk everywhere.
Right.
And the world's like very pretty, so I don't mind walking for the most part. But I really wanted a mount, and I kind of figured, and I also looked up a little bit that you do get a mount just by doing the main story quests. So I was like, okay, I need to grind out the main story quests, and I'm going to get myself a mount. And it just took forever. Like, it took a long time. I think because the story quests introduce you to dungeons, which is actually great because it kind of forces you to experience whatever dungeon system they have. And also, it's really cool because before you can even like queue up for a dungeon, you need to unlock it first via a quest, which is great because it feels like there's a reason that you're going to the dungeon entrance. Like in WoW, you just like hit level 15 or whatever, and then you can just teleport to some place that you've never been before, and that doesn't feel right. So I like that you actually have to go to each one of these places first, and that there's like a story kind of lock to it so that there's a reason for you to be there. So but because of that, it takes a lot longer to do a dungeon than it does to like collect 5 feathers or whatever you need. So it just took a little while because you had to do 3 of them. And then actually a really cool part was the main story quest. It was basically one of those scenarios where I won this battle, but then at the end of it, there was a cutscene of someone knocking me out anyway. And then you wake up in this cave, and there's no exit on the cave. There's only a dungeon entrance on the cave. And I'm just thinking, how do I even get back here if I teleport out? You know what I mean? Because it wasn't like an instance area. It was like in the world somehow there's other players just in this cave chilling with me, waiting for a group to spawn in or whatever. But then, you entered that dungeon. I don't know what it's called. It's not a dungeon, but it was just a single like boss. And this big boss fight with me and 3 other people. And that was really fun. I was like, whoa, the story is like making sense for like raids and stuff. Like it's like, I don't know. That's never happened in an MMO before. So that was really cool. But I finally did that. I had to do a bunch more other quests. And then finally I got my mount and I was really happy about it. But then as soon as I got it, I was like, you know what? I've been doing so much combat trying to slog through this. I'm just gonna, gather some herbs for like 6 hours.
Right, yeah.
So I've just been doing profession stuff, which is fun. It's really making me question stuff like my character can do every profession. So when I'm a carpenter, you need wood, but the carpenters don't get wood. Like gatherers get the wood. But in WoW, I'd have to consider, oh man, do I want to get that gathering, skill? Because if I do, I'm never going to be able to cook. I'm never going to be able to fish, or all these other, or I think those 2 you can get. Everybody can do, but secondary professions you can only pick 2, so they're really important which ones you pick. But here it's like, well, I can just do all of them. So I think it makes more sense lore wise too, because it's not like, oh well, this guy is amazing jewel crafter, so there's no way he can do this other thing. It's like, what? Like, if I put the time in, sure, I should be able to do that too.
Right, definitely.
It really is questioning, like, why is it like that? I don't know. But it's an interesting
I could see that
thought.
Having, if you wanted to do it for sort of like player-driven economy reasons, because if people are locked out of certain professions, it means you have to interact with other players to get whatever you need to make, but that's also a con in some ways, depending on how you look at it. So I don't know. That's cool though, that they let you kind of just do whatever you want.
Yeah. And it makes it so that when you start these professions, you don't have to make like a choice where you're locked into something, which I like because there's a lot of that going on in WoW right now. But yeah, so I've just been enjoying it, man. I've been doing a lot of gathering lately, but I have my mount. It's a chocobo. You know, he looks okay. Weirdly enough, you can't use the mount inside of a city, which is like I'm in the cities a lot, so and they're
Yeah.
big too.
Hmm.
So that's still a little annoying. There is like fast travel within cities, which is cool, but I'm not experienced enough to know exactly where I'm going all the time. So
Right.
um yeah, but I'm enjoying it still. It's been fun and I'm gonna continue playing it. I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do next. I wanna keep doing some profession stuff and oh, by the way, quick, I forgot I think last time I mentioned I haven't found a single thing that my free trial couldn't do.
Yeah.
I finally found something.
Oh.
I don't have access to the auction house,
Ooh. Hmm.
which I was told is actually the same in WoW's free trial too. But I was just like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. But it was fine because I was gonna buy wood for my carpenter, and I was like, oh, I guess I could just get it myself.
Right. Right. You can
So it's fine,
pretend you're doing like a solo self-found account or whatever.
right? So yeah, it's been good. I've been enjoying it. But what have you been up to, Wes? Have you gotten into that Dark Souls 3?
That is exactly what I've been up to.
Okay.
I was not far enough in the game where I felt super bad about just deleting my file and starting over. So I did that, even though story isn't necessarily super important in Dark Souls. I still wanted to get sort of the intro all the way through experience. And also, I definitely need some practice on the enemies at the beginning of the game to remember how to Dark Souls. Um, so it was good to start over. And I just either totally underestimated or totally forgot the scale of the scenery in Dark Souls 3 is pretty awesome. Like the first place you walk into is just this massive, twisted, confusing environment where like you're on this giant cliff. You can see exactly where it leads and it's like rendered way in the distance. So you're like, okay, that's my goal and that's where I'm going. But then there's just like all these vast mountains in every direction and definitely not all like 3D rendered, but the way that they do it looks really it's a really cool style so that it gives you this immense scale without having to make it all like you can go to that mountain. Like you're still definitely in a very linear type game, but I just forgot how well they illustrate their environments. And in the same way, one of the places you go pretty soon after that is a giant horrible swamp, which Miyazaki loves. In every single Dark Souls game, there's a horrible swamp that poisons you endlessly. But a couple different places you can go up and down, and the main mission that you have in that area is to extinguish these three torches that are on these giant pillars to get access to the boss room. And I realized after I'd extinguished, I think, two of the pillars, there's this ladder in this sort of section out of the way that lets you go up this huge tower and overlook the whole swamp, and you can see how many of the torches you still have lit. So they just do a great job of like giving you visual cues and opportunities to take in like, okay, this is what I've done, and this is all the crap that I still have to slog through to get to my goal.
Mhm.
So I'm really enjoying appreciating that, and none of the bosses have so brutally kicked my butt so far that I'm hating the game, which is nice.
Yeah.
I'm not a great Dark Souls player, but I'm fairly competent, so it's good. I can get through most of the bosses, but they've still been a
I
challenge.
forget is there a difficulty modes on that?
No, no, they're
Okay,
just
it's just what it is.
yeah. You just play Dark Souls, and that's
Gotcha.
which is brutal, and a lot of people don't like for issues of like if you want to experience this story or this game, but you don't have the reflexes, or you just, for whatever reason, a handicap or something like that, aren't able to play through it, it's tough because also just the theme of Dark Souls is just being like ridiculously difficult. So I can
Mhm.
understand both sides of it, but from my perspective, thoroughly enjoying all the bosses. The world is just so dark and gruesome and weird, which Dark Souls does beautifully. And it's getting me way too hyped for Elden Ring, considering it's still like a year out, I think. Actually, no, I think it's January. So maybe I'm 6 months. I can't maintain the hype for that long, but at least it's not too far off.
Yep, yep.
So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing, just slogging through it. Got through most of the like first intro sections, and I'm probably getting into the real meat of the game now and some of the DLCs that you can access early on. So we'll see how that goes. I still got a ton left to explore, and I'm super pumped for it.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully getting some cool armor or something.
Oh yeah, it's all about the fashion souls.
On a Final Fantasy, I got like this tank armor, which had my face completely enclosed in the helmet, so you couldn't see my face at all. And in all the cutscenes, there's always a cutscene that just like goes right to your face, and it's just like blank expression because it's just a like a this like knight's helmet. Can't see anything.
That's good. That's
Kind of
seeing.
ruins all the cutscenes in a great way.
Yeah. I like that a lot. It's actually in Dark Souls, for me at least, one of the key things for the fashion for my characters is they got to have a closed helmet, because as much as I love Dark Souls, the character creator just, everyone feels like they look so out of place. Like the characters you make just look so weird in the world.
Yeah,
And also when you
I've
die.
seen some weird ones, but they're funny.
Oh yeah. That's also great. I try to make mine like kind of serious, but they all look silly. And the more you die in Dark Souls games, the more you kind of look like shriveled beef jerky. It's called hollowing. And so you just look like this zombie walking around. And so I'm very happy to just put on like something that covers my whole face when I play.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think we should start talking about our special topic for the day. We've got an interesting company and set of computers that we haven't mentioned that are coming out in late 77 and through 78, which is the Heath Company and the Heathkit computers. We wanted to talk about these just because they're a little different than what we've talked about before and pretty interesting. And obviously, we haven't mentioned them earlier. So, starting off with the Heath Company, it was originally founded all the way back in 1911 by Edward Bayard Heath, and it was an aircraft company, specifically making the electronics in aircrafts, I think. But after the founder passed away in 1947, interestingly enough, in a test flight for an aircraft, they decided to transition to electronic kits for hobbyists. And they started off with an oscilloscope kit, which apparently was really popular and got them thinking, hey, if we make a bunch of these different electronic kits, we can make a pretty good business out of it. And originally their idea was basically same as it is with all the computer kits that we're seeing now. The company and the customer save money because the customer is the one who's assembling the product. And while that's a negative for some people, for electronics hobbyists, that's just like a plus, because you're like, oh, I get the product, but I also get to know how it works and build it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And one of their most popular kits that they made in these early years, in like 47 into the early 50s, was these ham radio kits, which apparently are still around today. And ham radio enthusiasts still use the original Heathkit radios that were being produced. So I guess they were made pretty well too, and they got like this nice vintage quality to them. But the new head of the company, Howard Anthony, would also pass away in 1954. And after that, the company wasn't doing so well, so it was absorbed by the Daystrom Company, who decided to diversify and make it kind of spread to basically all aspects of the electronics market. They were making digital radios, where before they just started with analog radios. They started making color TVs, a bunch of other stuff, going into education manuals for how all of these products worked. And then in 1977, they entered the personal computing market with the Heathkit H8, which originally sold at $379 or $1,683 today. And this was pretty low price comparably, but it was also incredibly bare bones because it was a kit. It didn't come with any type of display or any type of paper printout, as far as I know. I think it had this very, very tiny, barely usable display as part of the machine, but basically you needed either an additional screen or a paper printout for it to be any use. and it really didn't have any storage space on it. So that price was kind of for the base, but you needed to throw a couple other things onto it to get it to actually be useful. And the microprocessor that it used was also pretty interesting. It was based on the Intel 8080, but instead of being a normal serial bus 100 microprocessor, which we talk about a lot, basically that just means the bus on the microprocessor has 100 different pins. This one was a 50 pin computer bus, which apparently was more reliable than the S100s. Early in the personal computer market and microprocessor market, I think S100s just caught on, but apparently they weren't super consistent. And a lot of the times people were only using like 40 of the pins on the S100 anyway. So this seemed like it was a pretty good design for the Heathkit and made it a pretty reliable machine. And after the H8, they would eventually release the H89, which transitioned over to a Zilog Z80 microprocessor instead, and was a little bit more all-in-one because it came with a disk drive and a terminal screen included. Another interesting product that we wanted to touch on that they came out with in '78 was the H11 computer. This was a 16-bit computer instead of an 8-bit computer, which I don't fully grasp the meaning of, but it basically seems like it can make more complex actions because it can compute more at once. That's a very rudimentary description of it. Somebody who knows more about it could probably explain it better. But the main 16-bit computer of the time was the PDP-11 mini computer, which, despite the name, is like this giant server tower, basically.
Yeah.
So this was interesting because the H11 was kind of trying to be a personal computer version of the PDP-11. So it could do a lot of stuff that the PDP-11 could do, which is like this complex computing, sort of more in the accounting or other really like heavy numerical function fields than for making games. And it did this by using the LSI-11 microprocessor from the PDP-11, which had a bunch of more complex functions such as accessing the computer's register, managing all of the input-output devices, and having control over which drive you're booting from. But because this was so capable and complex, it was also very expensive and wasn't really too popular with the consumer market. And that's pretty much all I had for the early history and some of the products that they had. Ben, do you want to talk about some of the games that were on the Heathkit?
Yeah, so we've been skipping over basically all these games, and the reason we skip over them is because we've seen them all before, and we don't usually cover games that are just ports of things we've already seen. But I wanted to kind of go through some of them just to kind of give you guys an idea of what was on these systems. I do want to say I tried to look up like pictures of what the computer looked like, and I found one picture, so I don't know if it's representative of all Heathkits, specifically the H11, or if it's just happens to be this one. But they attached it to a terminal, first of all, so maybe the terminal might have something to do with what it looked like. But it actually had a golden or yellow hue to everything, kind of like the Commodore PET has this green hue to everything.
Right.
So I kind of liked that. It was kind of cool looking, I thought. This kind of yellowy hue. So it was different. It was cool though. But getting into some of the games, I think the two main sellers that Heathkit did was these two game sets that they published themselves. And I see these game sets whenever they have an ad in one of our magazines, which Heathkit had a lot of ads in these magazines because they were kind of targeting that hobbyist user group. So the first game set had games such as Craps, Orbit, Tic-Tac-Toe, Nim, Hexapon, Hangman, Hammurabi, why? And one called Derby, which I believe all these are just like basic games, you know, like the basic 101 games, or just standard classics that we would see on any computer. But then they also had Game Set 2, and on this one they had Bagels, Slot Machine, Gomoku, Yahtzee, Apollo, which is a lunar lander type game, Gunner, Wumpus, and Cube. It's a lot of like number guessing games. We got some card games in there. We got a lot of RNG games. And then the classics like Hammurabi, Lunar Lander, Hunt the Wumpus. You know, so everything we've seen before. They also had Star Trek on there, Blackjack, Empire, which was a really old one that we covered a couple times. There's been a lot of different releases for that. That's on there. And then I did look at the H8 as well. These ones seem to be the same 2 game sets, but also just like a bunch of other basic 101 games. Casino games, Hangman, Kingdom, number games. So, nothing that's really interesting, but just to kind of give you an idea that there were games for these systems, but they were almost all ports of basic games. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Nobody's like just. I guess that's because maybe I think I read that the H-Kit H11 or maybe it was the H8 could use BASIC on it or came with BASIC on it. So it must have been fairly easy to port stuff over, but it doesn't seem like anybody is making games specifically for these systems. And that's kind of it. And that's why we haven't really talked about it before now, even though it's been out for, a year or two. So, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to talk about it in the future. It could, I don't know what's coming out for these systems. So maybe there is something right around the corner. So it's just good to know about them. Along with the North Star that we did a couple weeks ago. These are kind of the last, somewhat we'll call new systems since the Holy Trinity. So yeah, it's kind of good to be all caught up in the computer land. What do you think, Wes?
Yeah, absolutely. And in my little research of the history that I saw, they're around for a while. Whether or not they're mainly in computers, they're still going to be making electronics. So it's an interesting company to keep our eye on and see where they dip into video game history.
And it sounds like they have some, the ideas maybe aren't like suitable for us a lot, but it sounds like they have some interesting ideas, taking like the power of the PDP-11 and putting it in a small computer, or taking a personal computer and like going with that 50-pin bus or whatever. So
right.
I feel like they are doing some things kind of unique, and who knows, like maybe the next thing that they do that's unique might be a big system seller. I don't know. So we're just going to have to keep our eye out.
Absolutely. And while we are waiting for Heath to make their next big Heath kit, let's move into our timeline and take a quick break, talk about the games that we've got today.
That's a goal. I'll probably cut that. Hello and welcome back to the history of video games. We're going to jump into some games, and if you haven't guessed by the title, this is going to be an episode I'm going to be pretty happy about. And we're just going to hop right into it. I'm going to review Basketball for the Atari 2600. It's the last game for the 2600 that we're doing this year. And unlike some of the last couple games from the 2600, this one's a bit different. It's actually just incredible. And I will explain why. But it's basketball. I love basketball. I've played many years when I was in elementary through like middle school. I didn't play too much in high school, maybe a little bit. Definitely not on like a school team or anything. But right. I love basketball, and so far basketball has been basically Pong games. We did have a kind of good one in the Odyssey 2. It was different. There was actually people on the screen, but it was similar to some Pong games.
Right.
This one doesn't feel like Pong at all. It feels like basketball, and that right away, that's amazing. To tell you all the reasons why, I first need to say that this is by Alan Miller. I think it's his last 2600 game he makes. He's important because he's actually going to be the co-founder of Activision.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah, this is kind of an important guy. But yeah, he made this game along with Surround for the 2600, which was a snake game, and he also did like Hangman, I think. So he's done a couple, but like this has got to be his grand opus. I don't know, because man, when you look at this game, you don't even need to like play this game to know how good it is. I did play it, but it's just incredible. First of all, they're dribbling the ball right away. Amazing.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's huge. That's such a big deal. That the fact that they're dribbling. It's just a 1v1 game, which is fine. I totally dig it. Unlike the Odyssey 2, which was, I don't know, could you move up and down? I completely forget now on that one, if it was just side to side.
It was just side to side.
Yeah, on this one you can move up and down, so you actually have kind of like a 3D playing field, and it's weird too because the ball, after you shoot it, it can bounce off the backboard or something and kind of like go towards the top or bottom of the screen, and you actually need to go up or down to get it. So somehow the ball knows that even if your person's like feet are overlapping the ball, that you didn't pick it up because you need to like kind of go down to pick it up with your hands, which is cool. There's definitely situations where both people are kind of like running towards the ball, and it's a, you know, whoever can get it first it's like a mad dash, which is really fun. And then the other thing, there's a couple things I really love about this game. The next thing I want to say is that the gameplay is so fast. It's like it's super smooth refresh rate wise, but then also as soon as a bucket goes in, the other person just starts with the ball, and it's an instantaneous like go again kind of feeling, and it just means that there's no downtime at all in this game. You're playing it from beginning to end. It's a 4-minute game, and there's no downtime at all. You're either playing defense or you're shooting, and that's it. No waiting, which is kind of like completely opposite from my experience of NBA 2K21.
Right, yeah.
Where I was just waiting to play the game because there's so many like weird cutscenes, and you know, I had to watch somebody just like cheer or do their free throw warm up. Like there's none of that. They're just playing the game, and it's a lot more fun. So I don't know what that tells you. Also, just the playing of the game is super fun. The shooting is exactly how we shoot now. Basically, you hold down the shoot button. The longer you hold it, the further the shot is going to go. So you can do a full court shot if you want to, I think. I don't know how far the max range is, to be fair, but you can shoot like from anywhere, and there's like a skill involved of, well, if I shoot it this far back, I'm going to need to hold it down this long, which is awesome. And
Nice.
there's even a little animation of the dude like kind of holding his hands behind his head or above his head, and the further up he goes, you know, it's more powerful of a shot. So it's pretty cool, and it also means that if you're really close to the net, you can just kind of tap that shoot button, and he'll just get it off really quickly, which is also important because I think while you're in the process of shooting, and also anytime the ball is moving up in the air, the defender can come over and try to steal or deflect the ball and get it for themselves. So you only really want to shoot the ball when you have a moment where the defender's not on you, and you kind of do that by juking them out, you know, moving up on the screen, then quick back, you know, and they kept moving up for a second, and you got your moment of opportunity to shoot, which feels very similar to how real basketball is.
Right.
So the game just plays amazing. The graphics also are pretty darn good. As far as like the characters go, they're a little bit more detailed than stick figures. I mean, to the point where like they have a kneecap, which is a 1 pixel sticking out, which looks a little weird. And but the main thing are their arms. You know, they actually dribble the ball, so the ball goes up and down. And then there's like 2 different sprites, I guess. One where their hands kind of like mid out, and then the other one where it's kind of like down, so it's kind of like they're dribbling the ball. And then you've got a couple different sprites whenever they shoot it, and you also have a jumping sprite, I guess you could say. And that one is particularly funny because the guy just like, I don't know, the way they jump, like all momentum stops, so it's just straight up and down. It looks very strange, but it's cool. Also, they move their legs when they run, so that's pretty cool. Again, it's not great when they do it. It's almost like a third leg pops out of their kneecap and goes on the ground. But it works. It gets the idea across and gives you some movement. And I think compared to anything else we've seen on the 2600, it's leaps and bounds better. The actual court, it's pretty simple. The players are green and purple colored, and there's also green and purple kind of sidelines along the court. And then the basketball hoops are just these kind of like almost like big crosses, but without one of the edges. So it's kind of like a big half T kind of looking shape where the bucket is. But it's cool, like kind of no matter where you are on the court, like high or low, when you hit that shoot button, it always kind of goes towards the hoop, which is just awesome. I don't know how it figures that out, and it collides with the backboard, and it's very realistic how it like goes into the net, which is surprising.
Oh, nice. So it actually goes down through the net instead of in the Odyssey 2 version. It kind of went backwards off the left and right of the screen.
Yeah, it does go down through it, but it's a little different because as soon as it like is in the hoop, it immediately respawns and the gameplay continues.
Oh, okay,
so
yeah.
You never see it actually go all the way through. But it's not like a weird bucket system like the Odyssey 2 had. It's more just kind of a straight corner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, nice.
Another big thing this has over the Odyssey 2, you have a 2-player mode and you have 1 player versus AI, which is amazing. And the AI is actually ridiculously good. I mean, I wasn't say struggling, but it was a pretty even game on the normal difficulty, and there's a hard difficulty. So the AI knows what they're doing. They go, they block the ball, they shoot the ball. I don't know how it's so good. I don't know how they even know where the ball, like compared to most AIs in games, this one feels so advanced. It's crazy. It's almost like you're playing a real human. I mean, every time that it's doing movement, like sometimes it'll like go off into the corner. I'm like, what are you doing there? But I feel like at the same time, I'm like, maybe it's just pitying me and trying to let me get some points. I don't know. Because there's other times where it's like on you and you're not getting a shot off. So it's a really good level of difficulty and really fun to play 1 or 2 players. So that is really good. And I think you can score as many points as you can in 4 minutes. So that's basics of the gameplay. But let me get into my scores. I'm going to start with the best one, the actual gameplay itself. I gave this a 4 out of 10. I loved it. If I had the 2600, well, first of all, I want to say, I think this is the most fun 2600 game that we've done, period. Like, I don't think there's any game, despite how many variations they may have, that holds water to basketball.
Wow,
because
okay.
it's just so modern in a lot of ways. It feels like you're playing NBA 2K21, but I'm actually enjoying myself. The way you shoot the basketball feels realistic. The dribbling and stuff is, we've never seen that before in a game. There's just so many parts about this game that makes it feel like basketball, and the gameplay is so fast that you're just in it the whole way through. There's never a moment where you can like take a break, or you're just totally invested in the game. You can't take your eyes off of it or else you'll lose a point or something. So it's just a really enticing game, and the fact that it has 1 and 2 player modes and the 1 player mode is good, that's crazy too. Like, there's so many amazing innovations here, I just can't even start. So I thought the gameplay was just awesome. It helps that I love basketball a lot, but this is the first time we've seen so many of these concepts, from dribbling to people moving their feet when they're going across the court, the fact that the court's kind of 3D, the fact that you have to hold down the button. The longer you hold it, the further your guy's going to shoot, but also at the same time, the longer you hold it, the more of a chance your opponent has to steal it. It's just crazy good in terms of gameplay. So I just gave it a 4 out of 10 there. For graphics, I gave it a 3 out of 10. I think they're really good. If you compare these sprites to the sprites of like the Outlaw game that was on the 2600 that released this same year, you would think that they're from 2 different consoles.
Wow.
I don't know why that is. Like, they're just so much smaller than on the Outlaw game, and yet they're just as detailed almost. So I don't know. And there's a lot of animations. It just looks really good. And despite the fact that the court is very simple, there's no 3-pointers, there's no 3-point line, it's none of that. The baskets are very, very blocky, but it kind of doesn't really matter because what matters is the actual characters themselves, and they look really good and have a lot of good movement to them. So I liked it a lot. The ball is definitely a square, but it's fine. It works. And by the way, the gameplay, there's no frame rate issues here. I don't know what the frame rate is. It looks like it's 120 FPS, man. It's crazy.
Nice.
So that's good. The sound is the big problem. It's not problem, but like it's just like Pong beeps, and that's it, essentially. So you do get something whenever you're dribbling the ball, and whenever you steal it or like shoot in a hoop or something. So there's like a decent amount of these Pong beeps, but they're all Pong beeps. There's no like cheers, there's no music, so it's lacking there for sure. I just gave it a 1.25 out of 10. But, it's fine because the gameplay is really good, so it doesn't matter that much. I can put on, like, ESPN in the background and it'll be fine. And then for relevance, I gave this a 9 out of 10 because I have a strong feeling that not only did this do a lot of things first, which it definitely did, but that it's going to influence a lot of stuff because the Atari 2600 isn't just like a small console. This is like one of the primary consoles of the time. I think at the beginning maybe it didn't sell too well, but like it's going to be around forever, and I guarantee that basketball is going to be one of those games that is always being sold for this system until they stop making it, like the whole system. Like it's just feels like it's one of the most influential and recognizable games from the whole system, and you have that part of it, but then you also have the fact that it came out before anything else in terms of the basketball gameplay. So like whenever anybody does basketball next and they do it kind of in this fashion, it's gonna be because they played this game. Like I think there's a lot of really direct influences here. I don't know if I can like 100% confirm that, but that's my guess. And just so many innovations from the dribbling, which is obviously a massive part of basketball, to the way the shooting works, the defense works, the way the court's set up, so many things. It's just super good. So yeah, I give it a 9 out of 10 for relevance, and then overall I give it a 3.5 out of 10. Super fun. It's lacking a little bit in the graphics, a lot with the sound, but the gameplay just has so many innovations and just feels like I'm playing basketball for the first time in the timeline, which we've been doing this for a long time. This podcast, this is the first time I've played a basketball game where it's felt like basketball. So,
right.
And I think with that, I think all the major sports games have a game out there that's kind of similar to what we have now, from baseball to football and finally basketball now. So, I don't know. I don't know what else. I don't know if we're waiting for hockey. I'm not necessarily waiting for hockey, but
somebody might be. But I mean, we got some good ones. It's fun. It's nice to have basketball finally in the list of like, this feels like basketball. That's exciting. That's cool because the Odyssey 2 was getting pretty close with the shooting, but this sounds like it just takes it to a whole nother level. And like you said, with something as prolific as the Atari 2600, there's a good bet that at least for American releases of basketball games after this, they're going to have to take into account what the Atari 2600 did.
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's just a super important one and a super good one. Like I mentioned, I think this is the best 2600 game that they've made so far. So to me, it almost completely changes that dynamic. If I had to list like my top 3 consoles, I had to be like, well, the Atari 2600 has basketball.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much different it looks from some of the other ones that we've done. So I don't know what changed or how they were able to do that, but maybe it has to do with the fact that like half the screen is black because it's kind of like where the stands would be, if that makes sense.
Right.
So they're not rendering anything there, except for like when you shoot the ball, kind of goes up in there. But I don't really know. It just looks really good though.
They somehow made it work.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basketball done right.
Nice. Nice. Well, that's awesome. Super excited about that.
Yeah, and also should we quick mention? I forgot to say this in the beginning, but because of basketball and the other two games that we reviewed today, we're only reviewing three because they're all like really important. So
Right.
we wanted to have some time.
Yeah, if you can believe it, after the intro that was the Atari 2600 basketball, we've got some more kind of crazy stuff coming too.
I know it's the end of the year, man. That's what happens.
Oh, yeah. But let's start off with a few honorable mentions. We're switching over to computer games now. And the first one that we have is Golf by Instant Software. It was for the Apple II and TRS-80, and it might have also been known as Country Club Golf. We've seen some dates for 79, but it basically just looks like a simple black and white golf game. You type in the power of your shot and the direction, and there's wind factor as well, but it's pretty simple. And then next up, we have for Softside Magazine, December, only had one game in it, which was Santa Paravia and Fumaccio. Google Translate helped me with that one, which is basically just a Hammurabi type game. I think you run a small Italian country in this game, but other than the setting, not too much that sounds super exciting.
With that name, when I first found it, I was like, "Oh, that sounds really interesting." It's like the Spanish kind of or Italian, I guess, sounding name. And then I looked it up. I was like, "Oh, it's Hammurabi."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we've been seeing that name pop up, and we're like, oh, this is going to be interesting when we get to it. But unfortunately, not.
Yeah.
But next up, the first game and only game that I took a look at today is a very interesting computer game. I reviewed Dungeon Campaign by Robert Clardy, which came out in December of 78, as with all the games that we're talking about today. This was by Robert Clardy, and also I think for later releases of it by his company, Synergistic Software, which was based in Seattle. And we have, straight from the horse's mouth, a bunch of comments. That's the right phrase, right? A bunch of comments from the creator himself on the CRPG Addict blog confirming that even though most dates say that this came out in 79, it actually did come out in 78. There was just more versions of it out in 79. And he also says that he was directly inspired by Dragon Maze by Bob Bishop, which, if you don't remember, was a maze game where the maze was kind of drawn in front of you, and then you're basically in a cat and mouse type game trying to escape the maze before the dragon gets you.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just simple graphics, just squares for everything in the maze, but it did have colors because it was on the Apple II. And basically, when Robert Clardy looked at this, he noticed that it was written for the 4K Apple II. And at the time when it came out, Robert Clardy thought that it was way too little RAM for the computer to be useful at all. And shortly after, they advertised the 16K version, which he bought and decided to expand on Dragon Maze with D&D elements, which would create Dungeon Campaign. He says that when he's looking back at the game now, I think it was in 2013 when he made these comments, it seems super old, and he said quaint is the best thing he could say about it. But he later described that sort of his dissatisfaction with the capabilities of the computers at the time, and also what he was able to do on those computers, kept pushing him to make better and better games. So this is sort of the start of a line of games that we'll probably be seeing from Synergistic Software and Robert Clardy. And lastly, this had a really cool manual that came out with it. It actually gave a little bit of background lore. You were exploring the Todtmacher Castle, which is Deathmaker in German. And one of the main interesting things about this game, which is also described in the lore, is that you are not one person exploring this castle dungeon. You are a party of 15 different people, 13 warriors, 1 dwarf, and 1 elf.
Okay.
Yeah, which becomes important, as I'll explain. So, because this is a computer RPG, I gotta, right off the bat, just give you a breakdown of how this game actually plays before I get into my review. So, at the beginning of the game, just like in Dragon Maze, it kind of draws the maze in front of you. And this is a 4-level dungeon. So, it does take about 5 minutes, but it has to draw all 4 of the levels in sequence before you can actually play it.
So they're like stacked on each other?
They're not layered on the screen. It just like draws one screen, makes a beeping noise, and then draws the next screen. And when you actually play the game, you progress through each level one at a time. So it just kind of like, it's almost like
Kind of like preloads.
yeah, it's like drawing it and then saving it to its like RAM memory, maybe, so it can access it later when you change floors.
Gotcha.
But as noted by the CRPG addict, if you wanted to, you could map out all of these mazes beforehand. I just kind of chose to leave it to fate because the mazes aren't detailed in front of you once the game actually starts. You only reveal them when you step next to a wall, basically. So it's kind of nice that it has that feature. On these old games, it has this nice feeling to me of like it's creating the world in front of you, so you sort of see the challenge that you're about to go up against. But basically, the whole point of the game is that you start on level 1 of this dungeon. You have to work your way down staircases after you find them while you're collecting treasure and escape the map on level floor with as much treasure and as many party members still alive as possible. And there's a variety of different monsters with different strength levels that you encounter as you go along. Their strength increases as you go down the floors, so they kind of give you incentive to grind on each floor so that you're ready for the next floor. And the way that strength works in this is a little weird. It's not an RPG in the sense that you can invest experience points into different stats. You just have strength and number of party members, which sort of serves as your HP, and your strength doubles for each party member, or not doubles, but goes up by 1 for each party member every time you win an encounter. So an example of that is you start out with 15 characters, so you're at 15 strength. You fight some orcs, you lose 1 character, but now you have 14 characters, and they're at 28 strength total. A little bit confusing, but it makes a little bit more sense when you play it. And so in addition to those static monsters, which you kind of encounter, and then once they see you, they might chase you or attack you on your next move, or you can choose to attack them first. There are also roaming monsters specific to each floor. So the first floor has a dragon, which moves slowly, but can only be killed by magical weapons. And this game has this weird meld of real-time and turn-based actions. So what they mean when they say move slowly is that the dragon only moves, I think, every 2 turns that you take. But then you get to the second floor, where the main roaming monster is giant serpents, and they are real-time movement. So even though it's a turn-based game, they're moving the whole time, which is super stressful, but kind of cool. But the thing with the giant snakes is that they are fast, but mindless. They don't seek you out, where the dragon actually chases you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and when they do encounter you, they just grab one of your party members and take them away. And that's for most of these roaming monsters. They're just kind of, you don't want to encounter them because they're just like a free kill on one of your party members.
Oh wait, sorry. So you were mentioning, if let's say you had that first fight, you went down to 14, but now you're 28 strength.
Yes.
So if one guy dies, does that take you down to 27, or is it like a lot because it was doubled, so it would be 26, I guess?
Each character retains like their relative strength, even though you control them all as one group. So you would be down to 26 in that example because you're losing 2, which is this weird give and take, because it's like, okay, it's really worth it to grind because then all of my party members have 4 strength each. But then it makes it so much worse when you lose like 2 party members at once, because now instead of being down 2 strength, you're down 8. And it's, yeah.
That's an interesting mechanic. We've never seen that before, for sure.
It's really weird and unique, and even like, I'm sure we'll see it more in the future, but it's not even exactly like anything in current games now.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. But for the last of the roaming monsters on the 4th floor, it's a specter, which can travel.
Sorry, what was the 3rd floor?
I think 2nd and 3rd are either both giant serpents, or one of them is also a specter.
Gotcha.
When I played, I went 1st, 2nd, fell through a hole, and went straight to 4th. So I didn't figure out what was on the 3rd floor. But I know that there's only those 3 roaming monsters, so it's one of the last 2 repeated. But the specters on the final floor just kind of, as you would guess for a ghost, fly through the whole map, and they take one of your party members and run away with it. but there's also a really cool animation which is when that happens, which I'll describe in my graphics rating. So those are the main things that you're avoiding. And like other RPG sort of roguelike or Beneath Apple Manor like games, you search on each tile that you move on to find treasure. It seems like in this, you can only find treasure in rooms, which they basically classify that as anything that's not a 1x1 hallway. So if it randomly generates like a 2x2 room, then you could find treasure in there. And you're looking for quadroons, which are the gold of this game, or items like invisibility potions, magic carpets, or magic weapons. Instead of losing hit points whenever you do battle, you lose party members. But the dwarf and the elf that I mentioned earlier are very important because if they randomly are the party member who dies, you lose like some of the functionality of the game. The dwarf, because he's experienced in caves, is the one that maps as you go. So if the dwarf dies, the map is no longer revealed as you travel, so you're just blindly going in the dark. And the elf will also warn you of incoming danger. So if you're like 2 blocks away from a hole in the ground, it will flash a message on screen that says danger, something nearby, basically. And not tell you exactly what it is, but let you know that something's coming. But then if the elf dies, you no longer get those warnings. And some of the environmental hazards that you could run into are the pitfalls that I mentioned, which basically take you down to the floor below you, or if you're on the 4th floor, they just instantly kill a few party members. And they are preventable if the elf says there's danger nearby and you decide to jump in the direction right next to you. You can jump over the pitfall, but even then you're kind of guessing which direction the hole is in. The poison gas rooms, though, are really cool. They're actually like this bright blue on the screen, and it's not revealed until you go into the room, but then it shows you where all the gas is in the room. And in real time, you only have 9 seconds to escape the gas room by moving out of it before your party members start dying off. So again, there's like that interesting give and take of real time and turn-based. So that is the basic gist of how the game is played. And now I want to talk about my ratings for it. As you can tell, there's a lot to this. It's pretty sweet, but it is actually a pretty quick playthrough because there's only those 4 levels that you have to go through. So starting off with the graphics, everything is basically just squares, but they're used so imaginatively that I had to give it a 2.75 out of 10. The walls for each floor are color-coded, and there's even a button that you can press to show you what all the colors on the map mean at any time during the game, so it lets you know what floor you're on, what kind of monster you're about to encounter. All of the wandering monsters have their own color, and all of the static monsters are a dark green. But then there's also the serpents and the specters, which are totally different. The dragon is just 1 block. The serpent is basically like you're playing a snake game, is this giant group of like 6 squares that moves around the maze. And then the specter is this gigantic blob of blocks that doesn't really look like a ghost, to be fair, but it is gray, I guess. So have to give him something for that. But that just sort of like floats at you, and because it's so huge, it can hit you from a lot further away. So even though they all look so plain, they just kind of work really well. And the fact that the specter and the snake are always moving on this like previously just turn-based map is really cool. The map filling out as you go is also really nice. And there's even some nice urgency to like black and white flashing text at the bottom when something important is happening. That's pretty good. And one of the things that I just thought was the most inventive use of all these tiny pixels, even though everything's so square, is that when the specter encounters your party, which is just a red square, you see it take off a tiny red pixel from the red square, suck it into the center, and then fade away with it. So like it shows you like this ghost just grabbed your party member and ran away with it. So it really creates surprisingly good imagery for the fact that it's just a bunch of different colors of squares, basically, with not much detail. So even though the fidelity is not really there, I think it's used really well. And another thing that boosts the graphics is that there's this really cool and well-detailed title screen of a dragon breathing fire with smoke coming out of its nose. So that even though it's not really in the game, it's just the title screen, definitely boosts it up a bit. And now for sounds, I gave it a 1.5 out of 10. These are pretty simple. I mean, the Apple II can do a decent bit, but it's still just a lot of beeps. But I do have to say they're being used pretty well in this game. There's like descending doot 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 whenever you walk downstairs, and it's the opposite except ascending whenever you go up a flight of stairs, which is just, simple but a nice touch. And most of the other noises are pretty much just different types of beeps for warnings about you entering a trap or when a dragon spawns on the maze. But I think it helps that they're not used all over the place. They're just used to kind of give you information. So I appreciated that, even though it's not like great sounds to hear and there's nothing super complex going on. They're all used only if they're telling you something. So it's not like there's just beeps all over the place that I would be driving me crazy. The gameplay, though, is really fun for this. I did only give it a 2.5 out of 10 because there is some weirdness to it. It still is just that simple grab the gold, kill the monsters type of RPG, but it's got some really interesting gameplay elements to it. The 4 different levels makes it super manageable compared to something like Moria, where I couldn't hope to beat that game in like 10 hours of gameplay. This one I sat down in like an hour, and it felt like it wasn't so daunting as some of the other CRPGs. Each floor also has its own unique feel, which is really nice with the different wandering monsters that you encounter on each floor. And it has this really interesting combat system where it's not just based on your strength. After you enter battle, it'll start generating numbers 1 to 10 in a sequence to simulate like a slot machine or like rolling dice. And you have to hit spacebar, trying to time it, although it does move pretty fast. And whenever you hit spacebar, it says, okay, you rolled a 5. It either multiplies or adds that to your strength and then matches it against a roll for the enemy's strength that you also do. And then it determines who takes damage.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really nice. Even though it feels kind of random because the dice roll is so fast, it's the closest I feel like we've seen a CRPG get to like simulating dice rolling in real D&D. So I really like that because it's not just number versus number. Your number's bigger, you win. It's also a little bit of randomness and a little bit of skill with trying to get the good dice roll. And also the weird part where you have to try and give the enemy a crappy dice roll. But my main gripe with the gameplay is that it really feels super random. You don't really know when you'll find a magic item, so you never really know if you can kill any of the big wandering threats. But in a way that's also kind of a positive, I guess. I mean, it means that you'll approach each run differently because you could say, well, I'll never get a magic item, so I should just run away from the dragon. Or you encounter one super early and you're like, maybe it's worth me trying to kill the dragon to get extra strength. So it definitely has some roguelike Beneath Apple Manor vibes in that sense, which I really liked. But there was just a couple of things about the overall simplicity of it that held the gameplay back a little bit for me. But then for relevance, I gave it a 7 out of 10. The creator of this game has said himself that he's not positive if it directly influenced any other games, but I think it's pretty relevant as an early and very unique take on a computer RPG D&D game. It simulates that dice rolling so well, which we haven't really seen before. And as we know, this game is going to spur Robert Clardy, the creator, to go on to make even more complex games in the future. So even if it doesn't influence anybody else, it definitely inspires him to keep making cool stuff. And overall, that left me with a 2.5 out of 10. Dungeon Campaign is just super unique and a refreshing take on the CRPG genre. It's like bite-sized and it doesn't feel so overwhelming. The wandering monsters really mix up the gameplay in a great way. And I think there's really smart use of the simple graphics that were available. The sounds were a little lacking, but they're also used in a pretty intelligent way. And overall, it made me just super excited for other things that he's going to come out with. And yet again, more stuff on the Apple II, because the Apple II is great.
Yeah, nice, man. I wasn't really sure what to expect from that one, but it sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's got a ton of cool stuff going for it. But I've talked about it for way too long, and we've got more to talk about today. So why don't we just get straight on into our next honorable mentions?
Yeah, we got a couple here. I'm going to start out by talking about Mud and Mud 1. Now, this is actually a really big one. I would have reviewed it full out, but I couldn't find like a good way to play the original. You could at one point play it via browser, but it required like the old version of Java, and that just recently changed within like a year or two. That's not being supported, and I don't believe they've updated the website, so I couldn't really play it anymore. There are some videos of people playing online, but it's pretty much a text-based RPG that we've seen before, like Colossal Cave Adventure or something. The main thing about why this is so important, though, is that it's an MMO. So,
Ooh.
like, I don't know how many people could have in there, but I want to say like tens to maybe 100 or so people. I don't really know how big it goes, but you could see other real people in the game, and it also had a really cool concept. I thought it was like a Colossal Cave Adventure where you had to solve puzzles and accomplish certain tasks that were kind of seemingly random. There was combat in the game. It was basically RNG dice roll combat, so it's not good. But it was what it was. But one of the things that was awesome about the game is that if you completed the game, which was hard, I think you had to solve like maybe 10 challenges or something. But if you did all those things, you became a wizard or a witch. And when that happened, you became invulnerable. So you could just go around, talk to other people, help them on their journeys if you wanted to, and just like be invulnerable, which is awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
It's interesting though, it's purely text based. So when you see somebody else, it'll probably just be like, so when you see so and so, I'm not really sure how it works, but I mean, if I played it today, I'm sure it would just be empty, unfortunately. But it's really remembered fondly from a lot of people who were able to play it back in the day, because it was the first time you could interact with other people in a meaningful way. And I think you could even do things like pick up objects from rooms and take them places, and people would go to a room and it'd be different because somebody else was there and they brought something and left it there.
Oh,
You know
nice.
what I mean?
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's really interesting. I'm sure there's sequels to Mud, and there's a lot of games in that style, including the next one I'm going to talk about. So I'm sure we'll play one of these as soon as we can. But we couldn't really play that one. Same thing with this next one. This next one's called Scepter, also known as Scepter of Goth, or Milieu, I want to say.
That sounds right.
It's by Alan Kleitz. It's another Mud. These are called Mud games because that's like what MMO was before MMO, I guess. That's another Mud game. It came out in 78, but it wasn't really popular till it was ported in 1983. The 78 version seems to be lost. I believe it was a PDP 11 version. So we'll probably play that one in 83 once it has this big, large release, which I forget what computer it ported to, maybe like the Commodore 64 or something. So we'll keep an eye out for that, and we'll definitely play it at the time. But I just wanted to let you know that, another Mud was released around this time. I don't think we have month dates for these, but we know they came out sometime in 78, and they seem so cool. I put them in the very end. But yeah, so 2 Muds, MMOs, even bigger than like Play-Doh. So
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All text-based though, so probably wouldn't score very well for us, probably.
True. All right, and next up we have a bunch of honorable mentions, which are Apple games, but that is APPLE games.
I see what they did there.
Yeah, it kind of works out. They somehow made the Apple Puget Sound Program Library Exchange. They probably had to throw some words in there to make it fit, but this was basically a user group, I think, of Apple II or other Apple computer users who just made a bunch of neat games. They made a bunch of games. We'll decide whether they're neat or not. The first one that we have here is One Armed Bandit, which is just a slot machine game, but it does have some pretty interesting images that cycled through on the slot machine. The next one, though, is Hex Pawn. It's in color, but it's still, 3x3 chess. So not too much going on there.
Yep. The next one is called Blockade. It's a 2-player blockade game, which is kind of like Snake. It's in color, but it played at a very low frame rate, which I was not expecting for an Apple II game. And then also we have Marble Drop. This is a quote unquote game where you drop marbles and try to land them in certain buckets, but the marbles can kind of move randomly, so it's essentially an RNG game.
Our favorites. And
Yeah.
next up, we have Blackjack, but a pretty not great version of Blackjack. The cards don't have any suits on them, and they're all one color. Yeah, I don't know. Not too great.
They also made a Wari, which is a version of Mancala. This one actually looks pretty decent. I was debating maybe rating it just to rate one of their games. It is very colorful, and all the little Mancala pieces are kind of a different pixel color. And there's like, I don't know, 50 or so on the board. But so it looked kind of cool, but it had no sound, and you communicated via text. So I don't know. I just left it
Right.
alone for now.
And last for that set of games, we have Towers of Hanoi, which we've seen many times. It's not really a game, and once you've solved the puzzle once, I think you can solve it as many times as you need to.
Yep. People need to stop making that game. All right, let's move on for the Apple games. This next one's called Dynasty. Came out in December, and you'll never believe what this is, Wes.
Oh, do tell.
It's a Hammurabi.
Oh, love to see it.
It takes place in China, though. I did boot it up just to see what it looked like, and it's still all text-based. And on turn 1, I had food riots, so super fun. Not gonna continue with it though. I basically just exited out as soon as I could. The next one though is Microchess 2.0 by Peter Jennings. I believe Microchess 1.0 is one of the more popular versions of chess that people could play, and this one is actually emulated. It came out on the Apple II and the Pet, and I played the Apple II one. I don't want to rate it because we don't have time. We got some other stuff we got to get to, but I do want to say I was able to beat the computer. I think there's multiple difficulties. I just left it on whatever the usual was, which I want to say was like maybe 8 out of 10 or something. But I was able to beat it. As far as how it played, in the beginning, I thought it was playing really high level chess. It like traded pieces like you normally would. It like saved its queen and stuff from getting attacked, prevented checkmates. So in the beginning, I thought I was going to lose for sure. And then towards the end game, we traded some pieces, and it just made like a bunch of weird king moves, like moving the king to the corner, and I was just taking all of its pawns. And I'm like, what are you doing? So it just could not handle the end game for some reason. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. If I had to say like what its rating was, if I'm 1350, then I would say maybe it's like a 1100, 1050, which is like decent. That's probably, if you're like a person that doesn't play chess a lot, it's probably a good challenge. And I want to say it looked good, like the pieces look pretty good, but it took about 30 seconds to a minute to make a move, and we probably had 60 moves. So it took like almost a half an hour to play the game.
Yikes.
Which, I don't know, I feel like if you're like classical chess takes like 5 hours to play a game, right? So maybe if you're a chess junkie, you don't mind it. But for me, who plays Blitz a lot, which is a 5-minute game per person, gets 5 minutes, then it took forever. But it was pretty interesting. I was glad to play it, but I'll kind of wait until it gets a little bit better, looks a little better, and plays a little faster.
Right. And so next up, we have Quick Watson by Radio Shack. Released in 78, but there also are several 79 releases of this game. And this is a game where you guess which people committed different crimes and then use a lie detector to get information and decide whether they were correct or not. So it's actually pretty much just a mastermind type of game, but it has some nice theming to it. Unfortunately, not too many visuals with it, though. Next up, we have Tank Ticks by Chris Crawford. Came out in December of 78. The earliest playable version that we have is or that we are able to play is in 81, so we'll take a closer look at it then. But this is a like board game, computer game hybrid of tank battle tactics. So it looks pretty neat, but we'll wait until we get to that 81 version to check it out.
Yeah, I believe that one used like a hex-based system, which we haven't. I don't think we've really seen that before, really.
Right.
So I'm sure it's really, really cool, but we'll play it when we can. This next one, though, is the other one that I reviewed today. It's another big one. I feel like this could easily be the title of today's episode, along with Dungeon Campaign. But this is Adventureland by Scott Adams, and it's the first adventure game that he makes. He's going to end up being probably the number one source for text adventure games in like the early 80s. So this is like a important guy, and we're going to be seeing a lot of his games. Especially next year. But this is the first one, and it came out in late 78. And for his first one, he basically just kind of copied Colossal Cave Adventure. I mean, in Colossal Cave Adventure, for instance, I think there's 13 treasures you have to pick up, and on this one, there's 13 treasures you have to pick up. They're both like fantasy kind of settings. But this one's a little bit smaller in terms of its like map. It's not as many rooms, and in Colossal Cave Adventure, you would like go left and then end up on the other side of the map because you like fell down a hill or something. Like there's a lot of like weird stuff like that. And this one's a little bit more simple. My experience playing this one, it felt a little bit more generous in terms of what you needed to do and the hints that it gave you along the way to do it. But there's no real like backstory or anything. It's just like you need to collect 13 treasures and then you win the game. They're all basically like puzzles. So for most of the puzzles, it seemed like, you know, maybe you saw a treasure, but you couldn't get to it unless you had X item, which was from some other part of the map.
Right.
But then even if you got it, you needed a second item to get back with it. So for instance, there was an item in quicksand, and you had to get to the quicksand, but then when you picked up the item, it made you like heavier and you couldn't go back. So you need like a second item, and it was very similar for, I think, one of the last ones is like a dragon, and I think you kill the dragon by releasing bees on it, which is very strange. But that's what you do. But then you also need to be like covered in mud or something, or else it'll like burn you to death. I don't really know for sure, but it's something like that. So it seemed like most of the puzzles were just like you had to find these two things and know to use them here. You know, because I'm sure using the bees on the dragon was not like most people's first decision. But yeah, it's all right. There's not too much to really talk about because it's just a text adventure, so there's no graphics. It's just text. One thing that is a little different, a little interesting, and I actually quite like it, is that the place where you input text is actually divided into two sections. So at the top, you have like the description of the room that you're in, which doesn't always have to be a room. It could be like a field or something. And that is like static. It never moves. And then at the bottom, you have like your, I forget what it's called, but where you type stuff in at. And it'll tell you like what happened. But it's kind of nice because I feel like in some of the older text adventures, the description of the room would eventually leave your screen because you typed in too many things. And it kind of like scooted up off the screen and you never saw it again. You have to like look at the room again.
Definitely. That's quietly a huge quality of life for text adventure games, because if you don't remember the exact wording or like spelling of an item in the room, it's just going to be like that item does not exist. You cannot pick up that item. So
right.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so that is really good. Also, it had a help thing that you could type in help, and it would tell you a couple words that you could use, which I don't know if the other ones did that or not, but it was like just a couple words. It was like, try pickup. I forget some of the other ones it said, but it told you what a couple of the base words were. In total, I think this game had around 120 words that it would recognize.
Oh, wow.
Which apparently is lower than Colossal Cave Adventure, but maybe that's a more advanced version of Colossal Cave Adventure that we didn't play. I'm not sure, but Colossal Cave Adventure definitely felt kind of weird and hard to use, but this one was not as bad. It did take me a while to figure out how to move. I think it's just because maybe in one of the directions I was trying to go, there wasn't anything there, and so it didn't tell me that I couldn't go like north, but I kept going north and it was just the same every time.
Right, yeah.
So I'm not sure what that was about really, but I went a different direction and it did work. So that was good. It gave me something new. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's a normal kind of adventure game. And I do want to mention the hints because it kind of gives you some hints. So there's an item in the game that you can get called a magic mirror, and when you use it on stuff, sometimes it gives you a hint. Not necessarily on, I think, what you use it. I don't know what it is. I was reading the CRPG Adventure blog, and they used it twice, and it gave them 2 different hints when they dropped it on different things. One of the hints was, don't waste honey, get mad instead. Damn lava. So that's the hint that you have to go for. What it meant was, so the first part, don't waste honey, get mad instead. There was a bear that you had to pass, and it's saying don't use the honey on that. Get mad instead. So you had to slash yell, or say yell, and then you startled the bear and it fell off of a ledge, which I don't know how you would figure that out.
Right.
But there's at least a hint. I don't know. And then the other part says damn lava, and then you actually had to dam up the lava using bricks for that part. So
that's pretty funny. I mean,
at least they gave you a hint, right? So
yeah.
The other hint that they mentioned was dragon sting is what the hint was, and it meant sting with the bees, I think. So it's weird. It's very weird, but I feel like it's a little bit more generous when it comes to how easy it is to get into, because I think you could map it out easier. The treasures are a little bit more obvious, and it's not like in Colossal Cave Adventure, like even getting past the first part was like such a weird series of events that you needed to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like here it's like, you get one item right away. Like I think I just walked into an area and it was like, there's an axe here, and I pick up the axe. Like there's something that you need to do with that axe, and that kind of leads you to, okay, I chop down this tree, and that leads me to this next thing, and that leads me to this next thing. So it's a little bit more easy going than some of the other ones we have. I do want to say there's not really combat here, but you do automatically die all the time and have to restart from the beginning.
No.
So that's not good. But let me get into my ratings. I don't have too much to say about this. Let's start with the hardest one for me to rate, which was gameplay. I did try to play this game a little bit, but I don't know. I give it a 2 out of 10. I think it's probably a slight improvement in adventure or text adventure games, just because of the way that the screen was laid out, and it's a little bit of a smaller game, so it's a little easier to get into and easier to map. Like there was a maze part of the game, but the CRPG Adventure blog said it was only 6 rooms, so it wasn't really a maze. Like that's fine. I'd rather have that than something that's like really annoying and you're stuck in for like a half an hour.
Right.
Definitely has its problems, especially with the automatic dying all the time if you don't do the right thing. Or I should say that's not necessarily the case, but you can't get a perfect score if you mess something up. So, for instance, if you tried to pick up that thing in the quicksand and then realized it's actually too heavy to get out of the quicksand with it, you actually had to drop it and then get out of the quicksand, but when you dropped it, it was gone for good. So, like the CRPG Adventure blogger would restart the whole game, but you could, I guess, continue and just finish without all 13 treasures, because I think you get a score at the end. So, you could just do the best you can. So I don't know if there's actually always a reason to restart, but if you want that perfect score, you're going to be restarting all the time.
Right.
But yeah, I thought it was a little bit easier to get into. So, and the setting is similar to what I was expecting, so nothing crazy. The descriptions are like one sentence, but it's fine. So yeah, 2 out of 10. For graphics, I don't know, a 0.5. They give you some descriptions. If there's something kind of interesting in a room, it'll usually say it. So that will always kind of give you an idea of what you might want to do. There's even like a room or a part in the map where there's like a sign that might give you a hint of what to do or where to go next. So there's a little bit of world building, but not a lot. So I just gave it a half a point because it's all text based. Sound, I gave a 0 out of 10 because there's no sound. And then relevance, this was kind of hard. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10 because this one did sell fairly well. And it's kind of hard to say that because pretty soon, like in early 79, Scott Adams releases his second adventure, which also I think sold really well. And it was kind of the two together that kind of really catapulted him and his business. But like, this is the beginning of like a guy that's going to be like the father of text adventures almost, for a certain period of time anyway. So he's a really important guy and is going to make a lot of these. Definitely an important one in his career and in the history of video games. And overall, I just gave it a 1.5 out of 10. It was okay. I don't know if I'm a big text adventure guy, but it was better than some of the other ones I've played. But I think the real problem with this game and most of the ones I've seen is that if it's all going to be text based, you actually need to tell me like a story or something.
Right. Yeah.
Because right now it's just get these 13 treasures, and they're really weird treasures too. Like, I think the one in the quicksand was like an idol of a bull or something like that. It was like, what? Why? It's just like, if it's all text based, you might as well make it interesting to read and try to make it like D&D or something. Like, there's no graphics in D&D. It's just like somebody's description. So if you can imagine it, it would be a lot better, I think. That and making it so that the puzzles are a little bit more intuitive and not just like yelling at a bear. Right. At least you had the hint, but it's just like you would never do that. So maybe that's the point, though. I don't know.
Yeah. They're always a little bit weird, but that does sound cool. It sounds like at least made some improvements in this iteration of text adventure game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder why this one is the one that really took off compared to some of the other ones we did. I think it's actually partly because it was advertised really heavily in the beginning in a lot of magazines and stuff. So people saw it, they probably ordered it. And unlike some of the other ones we've played, like a lot of the ones we've played, it's hard to think about, but most of them are actually for like mainframes and stuff. Mainframes and Play-Doh and stuff.
Right, yeah.
The Colossal Cave Adventure was. So was Stugan. That was on like a mainframe or something.
That's right.
So there's not a whole lot on personal computers at the time. This one being on the Apple II kind of had the best of it as far as the processing power. Obviously, it's all black and white text, but it was the first time maybe that somebody could play a really advanced kind of text adventure game on their personal computer. I don't know for sure, but I think that had something to do with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, and we know that this is a hugely popular genre, so the more accessible it is to people, probably the more exciting this one was going to be.
Yeah. All right, just two more, Wes, and we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, so let's close out with our honorable mentions. The next one that we have is Adventure 2 for mainframe, which was just an enhanced version of Colossal Cave Adventure. Not too much else going on there.
And then the last one we have Adventure 501, aka Adventure, aka Adventure 5. Also Adventure 430 and 440. Basically, there's a lot of people that wanted to put their own spin on the original Colossal Cave Adventure. These are all basically enhanced versions of it, so it's usually the base game, and then they just added additional treasures and puzzles on top of it. I've seen some dates like around the November-December range for these, so I just kind of put them all together. I don't think they're really that interesting for us to review because the base game is still inside of them.
Right.
So it would be pretty hard to figure out exactly what's changed. But once somebody does like a full rewrite or something, completely new adventure that's some sort of spiritual sequel or something, kind of like Adventureland was, like that's the kind of stuff we'll look at. But yeah, there's a lot. I just want to mention there's a lot of people taking Colossal Cave Adventure and putting their own spin on it and saying this is a new game or a new version of it. There's even more than those that we'll see. But and that'll do it for us today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a crazy episode. We only did 3 games, but they were like worth a full episode in their own right.
Absolutely.
The Atari 2600 Basketball, Dungeon Campaign, the Richard Clardy, and Adventureland, the first in the Scott Adams Adventure series. We will be seeing a lot of his next year, so very exciting.
Yeah, so we're getting towards the end of 78. Make sure to follow us on Twitter if you haven't already to get announcements about when our episodes are going up. Check out our website where we have tons of information and a timeline of almost all of the games that we have covered already. And send us an email if you have any questions or any information about these games that you want to share with us.
Yep, and with that, we'll catch you next week.
See y'all next time.